Roman Catholic Media and Novus Ordo Watch present Leo Watch.
Welcome to the May 2025 episode of Leo Watch. I'm Stephen Heiner, and with me for this series is His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello, Stephen.
It was many years ago that we started a series called Francis Watch, which was sponsored by Novus Ordo Watch. That's a successor. This is a successor to that series, and if you go to franciswatch.org, you'll find more than 50 episodes featuring His Excellency and our departed Father Anthony Cicada. May he rest in peace.
Departed comedian. Yes.
the major comic relief of that series, as if Bergoglio wasn't enough comic relief. Father really carried us through those episodes. So if you'd like to learn more about how the series started, you can go to that website. I'll tell you a little bit more about Novus Ordo Watch about halfway through this episode. What we're hoping to do, whether this is monthly, quarterly, however often we do it, is to cover what it is that Robert Prevost, ostensibly Leo XIV, is saying. And I think we'll start, Your Excellency, on the loggia, on the a few moments after Habemus Papam. We can still hear the faint yet ever courageous voice of Pope Francis as he blessed Rome, the Pope who blessed Rome, who gave his blessing to the world, the whole world on the morning of Easter. Help us, one and all, to build bridges through dialogue and encounter, joining together as one people, always at peace. Thank you, Pope Francis.
Yeah, he is a creature of Bergoglio. It recently came out that they had long conversations every day about the future of the church, and so Bergoglio was feeding him with all of his crazy ideas at length. So that recently came out. It was on the internet and reliable sources. So he is a creature of Bergoglio. You have to understand that. And he rocketed up very quickly to a place of great prominence in the Curia in a very short time. So there's no doubt about it. This is just Bergoglio II. And it's just that he's going to be smoother than Bergoglio.
And someone had reported, I think Novus Ordo Watch had commented on this as well, that apparently Brother Leo was a favorite of St. Francis. And so the idea was, well, what's the cover story for my choosing Leo? And maybe there's an occult reason as well, that he wants to show that he is a disciple of Francis, and that would accord with what you just said.
There's no doubt about it. He was a disciple of Francis, and also all of that, what he just said, is straight out of the modernist Bible. And he's memorized all these verses, I
was thinking we could have a bell go off. I said build bridges, ding, dialogue, ding,
yes,
encounter,
yes,
ding.
Yes, it's all in there. It's like a glossary of terms, and they just repeat the same old garbage from time to time.
Now, ordinarily, Your Excellency, you don't have any opposition to the Holy Father showing who he favors for the succession. We've seen this with previous pontiffs over the years. Obviously, most recently, we saw John the 23rd and Paul the 6th and other people like that. But it's not unusual for a Holy Father to show a favorite or a designate that he would prefer to be elected after he passes away.
I never heard of it before John the 23rd. In all of church history, there's no.
Maybe not so obvious as placing a pallium on you, but I'm thinking particularly of Gregory VII, Your Excellency, that he had a very good relationship with the previous Holy Father, and he worked for him in the Curia, and it was known that he was a preferred.
Yes, you could say. Well, yes, Pius XII was practically anointed before he walked into the conclave. Everybody, he was the Pope walking into the conclave. And certainly he was a favorite of Pius XI as Secretary of State.
Same for Pius VII and Pius VI.
Well, no, I wouldn't. No, Pius VII was elected in reaction to Pius VI as a compromiser and someone who would compromise with the French Revolution. Pius VI condemned the French Revolution, and he was elected as someone who would get along with the French Revolution. And then you had that back and forth. You see, his successor was against the revolution, and then his successor was for it. And when I say for it, getting along with it he was soft on it, you might say. And that went back and forth. So, no, there was no. I wouldn't say there was any kind of certainly not what you see with John the 23rd, who on his deathbed said, "You must elect Montini. He's the only one that will continue the council." And then Montini puts not a pallium, but that very stole that is worn, but you saw the stole worn by Leo, that he put in public. He put it right on his shoulders. And
Message received.
And but then in the 1978 conclave, that was nobody. There were no favorites there. So I wouldn't say that's a trend. No, it's not. No, not a trend.
But I'm saying it's not. The church isn't opposed to the Holy Father giving some sort of indication, if that was. But lately, it's not been.
I no, I would not say that. I mean, they never said you should elect this person. John the 23rd did. I mean, there's obviously certain. You could tell if somebody was favored by a certain person, by a pope, but there was Mary del Val, for example, was the very close collaborator with Pius X, but he was rejected in the 1914 conclave because they thought that Pius X went too hard on the modernists. See, I mean, there's a break in that. You see, it's not as if somebody just, like the favorite son gets elected. Not at all. Not at all.
Especially not in recent times. So a few days after the Loggia, we hear him say, "During Mass, I strongly felt the spiritual presence of Pope Francis accompanying us from heaven." And notice, even in heaven, he's accompanying. And a few days after that, "Today, in a special way, we remember our beloved Pope Francis with deep gratitude, who exactly 1 month ago returned to the Father's house. He accompanies us and prays for the church in heaven." Accompanying apparently goes on in the afterlife too, Your Excellency.
Yeah, that is just sentimental nonsense. You don't feel the presence of anybody in the Mass. I'm sorry, you don't. And it's just sentimentality to the extreme, and also saying that somebody is in heaven. How does he know that he's in heaven? What does he get? Special beams from heaven? Maybe that he's in heaven. I mean, this man that has destroyed the Catholic Church probably more than all of his predecessors, post-Vatican II predecessors, more than any of them, he has destroyed the Catholic Church. He goes to heaven. He pops into heaven. No purgatory at all. Nothing.
Well, if you're a post-Vatican II claimant, you become a saint. That's just how it works.
I guess so, yes. Everybody's a saint who has destroyed the church.
Right, so why bother with the canonization
That's
process?
True. You're right about that.
Santo
yes.
subito, right away.
Yes.
Also, on the night of his election, we have a letter he wrote to Rabbi Noam E. Marans, who is a director of the American Jewish Committee. "The cardinals of the Holy Roman Church elected me as Bishop of Rome and Supreme Pastor of the Catholic Church. I am pleased to inform you that the solemn inauguration of my pontificate will be celebrated in St. Peter's Square on the 18th of May, 2025. Trusting in the assistance of the Almighty, I pledge to continue and strengthen the Church's dialogue and cooperation with the Jewish people in the spirit of the Second Vatican Council's declaration, Nostre Aetate." I mean, priorities, Your Excellency. What are the first letters you need to write the night you move into the Apostolic Palace? One of them apparently is to the American Jewish Committee.
Now, what dialogue do we have with the Jews except when will you accept Christ as the true Messiah? That's the only thing to talk about with them, because unlike Protestants who would have to get over a lot of dogmatic problems, you might say, Jews have only one issue with the Catholic Church, and that is Christ the true Messiah? Because if they said, yes, he is, then they would believe everything that he taught, including all the Catholic Church and all the dogmas of the Catholic Church. That's the one dialogue to have, and to prove to them that Christ is the true Messiah. And yes, we should do that. We should urge them, and St. Pius V actually had them listen to sermons. See,
was it once a week or was it once a month?
It was on Saturdays or Sundays. I think it was Sundays, by a Dominican friar. So I mean, that's the conversation we need to have with Jews. And but I mean, what other dialogue are we going to have?
Some people say it's very hateful of you to say such things, Your Excellency.
Well, I mean, somebody's right and somebody's wrong about the messianic dignity of Christ. And so we have to talk about that.
Well, you have a position on that, I suppose, Your Excellency. Maron said the letter was significant for him because if a pope writes something like this 3 years in, it's one thing. If he writes it on his first day when there's no public record of his attitudes about Catholic-Jewish relations, it's not the same thing. That's why it's so dramatic. So they think it's a pretty big deal, Your Excellency.
He's an ecumenical maniac, just like John Paul II was. I mean, that this is the first thing on his mind is to reach out to non-Catholics and in dialogue and all of the ecumenical stuff that, the only way to reach out to non-Catholics is an effort to convert them to the Catholic faith. See, so the Catholic Church has always done that, but he repudiates that, and it's just all of this nonsensical dialogue, which has been going on since the 1960s, and nothing has happened. There is not one non-Catholic sect that has made any move to Roman Catholicism. In fact, it's Catholicism that has made moves toward them. In other words, Catholicism has watered down or removed its dogmatic barriers in order to have this sort of mushy church that has no borders. You see, so really, all of the movement has been on the part of the modernist hierarchy.
Well, we pointed out the word dialogue. This is one of these buzzwords, but the cooperation with the Jewish people, I'm still struggling with, what does that even mean? What is the posture and position? Cooperating how and for what?
I mean, I guess you could, distribute bread together or something.
Could be.
No, there is no possible cooperation on the religious level between Catholics and Jews. I mean, there's an intrinsic opposition there concerning the messianic dignity of Christ and his divinity.
So you're saying we don't just have a privileged path, Your Excellency, as Bishop Barron would say?
No, we have the single path to eternal salvation, and those who do not take it but through their own fault go to hell through their own fault.
Well, as usual, you're actually very intolerant and very rigid. If we say that actions speak louder than words and a picture is worth 1,000 words, at his very first Sunday Mass, he uses the ferula of Paul VI. And for those who don't know, Your Excellency, that cross that we so associate
the drooping cross.
Yes, with JP2. Now, some might say, well, Your Excellency, art is just a matter of taste. Why is this such a bad thing? Why do you think it's a...
No, it's not a matter of taste. Art, especially religious art, telegraphs a very strong message about something sacred. And that was actually Paul VI that got that thing out, or he had it made. Paul VI had notoriously bad taste. Everything he liked was extremely ugly. And so he carried around this ugly cross, and it is Christ in his defeat, which is... that was never portrayed in any Catholic art since the first century. The Christ was victorious on the cross. That's where he defeated sin and the effects of sin. And the resurrection is only a manifestation of his victory, but the victory was on the cross. And that's why the Catholic, the cross is always decorated, and it's something that is everywhere. And yes, it shows his sufferings, but his sufferings were his victory. He was not defeated on the cross.
So you're speaking more to that posture.
Yes, that posture. And he said, "No one takes my life from me." See, so he could have stayed there forever if he wanted to, because he was the author of life. See, I give up my life when I want to, and that's why he cried out with a loud voice, and at the end, to show that he was giving up his life of his own accord. And that's why the centurion said, "This man is truly the Son of God," because he cried out with a loud voice. It's in the gospel. See, nobody does that. Everyone gasps at the end, and they just pass away, especially with loss of blood, and you become delirious.
The physical impossibility of
yes,
a regular...
you could not cry out with a loud voice. So that's his victory. And so to carry around a cross like that is
What's the message they're trying to send, Your Excellency?
I really don't know. I mean, it's not a good message, though. I mean, it's to deny the victory of the cross implicitly, I would say, and it is to denigrate the cross. In other words, it's sort of an identification with man's misery, That's what I think it is. But it's just something that is repulsive. But for him to carry that around says, I identify with
Straight
everything
through.
back to Paul VI.
Straight continuity.
That's the uniform.
If he wanted to make a break, he would use the traditional triple cross.
Well, actually, that was never used. The Pope never carried anything until Paul VI.
Okay. When is that triple cross? Is that just artistic?
It's seen in some of the medieval. It was probably used in the Middle Ages, but it fell into desuetude. Probably in the Renaissance, you never see it.
So does the Pope not carry anything in procession?
No, he doesn't carry a crozier. He doesn't carry anything.
Okay.
He's he's the Pope. He does special things. You see, and no, that was invented by Paul VI.
We also have a meeting with leaders of different religions. Why wait for a CC, Your Excellency, when you can bring a CC to you?
Yes.
And here he goes crazy with the buzzwords. I'll just be reading through them. Synodality and ecumenism are closely linked. Mm-hmm. I wish to assure you of my intention to continue Pope Francis's commitment to promoting the synodal character of the Catholic Church and to developing new and concrete forms for ever more intense synodality in the ecumenical field. I might just stop there for a second, Your Excellency. What does that mean, ever more intense synodality in the ecumenical field?
It means he's going to give away the store. That's what it means.
Well, what would that look like? I mean, compared to what's already been done?
I know it's not much left in the store, but he's going to.
These are just the hyper clearance
this is
items.
All part of the transformation of the Catholic Church. It is all part of a new religion that is being imposed upon the institutions of the Catholic Church, which must be resisted by all Catholics, even to the point of death.
Today is the time for dialogue and building bridges.
Yes.
Therefore, I am happy and grateful for the presence of the representatives of other religious traditions who share the search for God and His will, which is always and only the will of love and life for men and women and for all creatures. It's very nice, Your Excellency.
That's very nice. Yes, they should all become Catholics. That's what the Pope should say. That there is your search is over. You're in the right place here, and you can all study the Catechism, and will receive your abjuration of error and receive you into the Catholic Church. That's the whole purpose of the Catholic Church. You see, and they're all striving. You don't have to strive. Your striving is over. You're right here in the Vatican. All you need to do is to make an abjuration. See, and the excommunication will be lifted. You see, so we can be very welcoming. You see,
we're in a convenient location.
No, it's all ecumenism. It's all subjectivism. I mean, he has been to the school. He is soaked in all of that. I can just tell from he's memorized the whole script.
Expressing his particular fraternal affection for the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew I of Constantinople, Orthodox Patriarch Theophilos III of Jerusalem, and Assyrian Patriarch Mar Awa III in the meeting, Leo XIV highlighted the need for Christian unity in light of the 1700th anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea to be celebrated on May the 20th. That council represents a fundamental stage in the development of the creed shared by all the churches and ecclesial communities. So, Your Excellency, there is a need for Christian unity in light of the 1700th anniversary of Nicaea, which developed a creed shared by all the churches and ecclesial communities.
Well, it is true that everybody, including the schismatic Greeks and Eastern schismatics and the Protestants, all recite the Nicene Creed. However, the Nicene Creed that we recite at Mass has the Filioque, which is rejected by the Eastern schismatics and by I'm not sure about the Protestants, but so Christian unity is achieved by the Catholic Church. There is no Christianity outside of the Catholic Church, no true Christianity outside of the Catholic Church. Pius XII says the only true Christians are Catholics, because you cannot have Christianity without the church that Christ founded. So yes, you can have Christian ideals or certain Christian doctrines, yes, that are Baroda Cardinal, one of the Mazzini, I think his name was, said stolen from the Catholic Church. They are taken from the Catholic Church. The truths that you do find in either the Eastern Schismatics or in the Protestants, they do have certain truths which they have taken from the Catholic Church. So there is Christian unity. There is no striving for Christian unity. What we should strive for is the return of those who are dissident to the true Church of Christ. The Protestants and the Eastern Schismatics should return to the true Church of Christ, which has always been the intention of the Catholic Church forever. The Catholic Church reached out to them at the Second Council of Lyons, to the Eastern Schismatics, and they said yes, and they sang Filioque 3 times at the Second Council of Lyons. They went back to their people and they said, no, we don't want it. We want to remain schismatic. And then again at the Council of Florence, they agreed to everything, Filioque, everything. They went back to their people, and their people said, we'd rather be under the Sultan than under the Pope. And so it continued.
Well, and their prayer was granted, you could say, Your Excellency.
Right. And Pius IX invited some schismatics to the Vatican Council, the First Vatican Council.
None of them showed up.
They didn't show up. I mean, there has always been this reaching out, you might say, and this desire to bring them back.
Well, in ecclesial communities, this phrase, Your Excellency, I've heard you refer to this as simply groupings of heretics.
Yes, the groupings of heretics, yeah.
Again, that's not very ecumenical.
Or schismatics, yeah.
While we are on the path towards the reestablishment of full communion among all Christians, we recognize that this unity can only be unity in faith. I don't know what to make of that, Your Excellency.
Well, faith, according to the Catholic religion, is the assent to the truths revealed by God and proposed as dogmas by the Roman Catholic Church. Faith for the modernist is an interior feeling about God, some sort of sentiment about God. So that's what he means by it, because obviously if he meant that they have to return and do an abjuration of their errors and recite all sorts of creeds with regard to the acceptance of papal infallibility and papal authority, etc., he doesn't mean that, obviously, because he wouldn't be saying the other things that he said. Faith is some warm feeling about God. You see?
As Bishop of Rome, I consider one of my primary duties to seek the reestablishment of full and visible communion among all those who profess the same faith in God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
As if that is the only dogma of the Catholic Church. As if you qualify for that, then you're in. That's a betrayal of of the most fundamental duty of his office.
Right. What is your job as Bishop of Rome, after all?
Right. To protect the faith is the first job number one. And you can't receive people back in. You should see, when we receive Protestants back in, they have to recite a very long formula about all the things transubstantiation, etc., papal authority, everything. It's not just that we believe in the Trinity.
Right, we share the same faith in God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That'd be a much shorter ceremony, so they could just say that.
I mean, why not? Why don't we just get it over with?
Even in these difficult times marked by conflicts and misunderstandings, it is necessary to continue with enthusiasm this very precious dialogue of ours. It's very precious, Your Excellency. We have to be enthusiastic about it.
I'm enthusiastic. Yeah. No, the only dialogue is, when are you going to give up your schism or your heresy and return to the true faith? That's the only conversation that needs to be had.
Well, it seems opposed to the next quote, Your Excellency. This approach, based on mutual respect and freedom of conscience, represents a solid basis for building bridges between our communities.
Freedom of conscience is an absurdity, because the conscience is simply a herald of the law. See, so it's a herald of the law of belief or the herald of the moral law. All it is telling you what you should believe, what you should do. And the law, it is based on the law. It is informed by the law. So to say freedom of conscience is an absurdity. It has no freedom. It is bound to the law, both of the law of belief and to the moral law. So it's a slap in the face to Christ the King.
Well, there's so much bridge building. I just have to ask architecturally, when we're thinking about building a bridge, is the idea that we're building the bridge so that you can cross over to our side, or we're supposed to meet in the middle? I think that's the image that he keeps evoking. If we're building a bridge, we can meet in the middle.
It's the same old trash. It's been said for years and years and years in all those Novus Ordo seminaries and everything. It's all ecumenical gobbledygook.
In a world wounded by violence and conflict, each of the communities represented here brings its own contribution of wisdom, compassion, and commitment to the good of humanity and the protection of our common home.
Yeah, that is the one of the commandments of the Novus Ordo, is that the purpose of the Catholic Church is to make the earth a better place in which to live, and to relieve the threats of climate change, to relieve war, as if we're going to stop wars. Come on. We're going to put an end to war just because we say so. You shouldn't really have war. And then poverty, we're going to, solve poverty, exploitation, all of the problems of humanity we're going to solve by chiding various leaders of the world as to what they should be doing and not be doing.
And I would point out to our watchers and listeners, Your Excellency, to your point of continuity, if I didn't tell people that Leo had said this, and I said that Francis had said this, there's not really... That wording looks very familiar to me. I've heard it for a dozen years or more.
He has memorized the whole book.
I am convinced that if we are in agreement and free from ideological and political conditioning, we can be effective in saying no to war and yes to peace, no to the arms race and yes to disarmament, no to an economy that impoverishes peoples and the earth, and yes to integral development.
That's straight out of the socialist textbook. The Catholic Church doesn't exist for integral development. What does that mean? It doesn't exist to put an end to wars. My kingdom is not of this world. You're not going to put an end to wars. The human race is a sinful race, and it is there. No matter, even in the height of the Middle Ages, there was war.
The best we could do is legislate for when it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, you give the rules of war and how wars should be conducted, but it says in sacred scripture, there's a time for peace and there's a time for war. You see, and that's true. I mean, sometimes the only solution to an aggressor is war. You can't say war is always evil. People are aggressive. I mean, if somebody bangs on your house and throws a rock through the window, you have to protect yourself from that. And the same thing is true of countries. If somebody invades your country, you have to go to war. You're not going to make this earth some sort of paradise, sinless paradise. It's not going to happen. You have to save people. You have to save their souls by preaching to them the Holy Gospel and sanctifying their souls through the priesthood and religious life, etc. That's the purpose of the Catholic Church.
Well, we're getting into the next meeting. He met with the Sanctissimus Annus Foundation. For those who don't know, Sanctissimus Annus was a...
Most Holy Year.
Well, it was also this contribution from JP2 to the Rerum Novarum discussion. It was an encyclical. And I thought we had to actually wait for Francis to give us some of his greatest hits. There is no Catholic God. Who am I to judge? It took some... Yes. Leo is jumping right in. I think we've got one of the hallmarks of his non-pontificate just in this meeting. The Church's social doctrine is in the service of building bridges of universal fraternity. I mean, it sounds like something that the Masons would say.
Yeah, that's Masonic. I mean, universal fraternity without faith.
Let us help one another to build bridges through dialogue and encounter, joining together as one people.
That's straight out of the Bible, the modernist Bible.
I feel like almost this is just a button we can push here. I see button number 3,
Yes.
And this comes out.
Yes.
Pope Francis spoke of a polycrisis when describing the dramatic nature of our own age, which is marked by wars, climate change, growing inequalities, forced and contested migration, stigmatized poverty, disruptive technological innovations, job insecurity, precarious labor rights. Is he running to be a politician?
Oh, my goodness.
There's nothing religious about any of that.
No, it's making the earth a better place in which to live. And also, there has never been so much wealth on the part of lower classes as now. I mean, the average worker, in comparison to the 19th century, 18th century, is making a lot of money. He's driving around in nice cars. He has to work for a living, though, and some people don't want to work for a living, and maybe that's why they're living in poverty. But it's a socialist principle to say, oh, it's wrong for you to all these Western countries to have all this wealth, and then the undeveloped countries don't have the wealth, and you should give it away, as if it is a sin to have this wealth that you have worked for. And that's wrong. St. Paul said, those who do not work do not eat. So you have to work for what you want. And, a lot of these undeveloped countries have a lot of resources that they could exploit and sell and make a better life for themselves. But there's a lot of corruption in the government, people on the take. And that's one of the reasons why they are backward.
Well, there's plenty of corruption and take in the United States, too.
There's plenty of that, too. But, I mean, despite all, we still have but, there's a lot of, in those underdeveloped countries, or whatever you want to call them, I mean, there's something missing. I mean, they do have an ability to support themselves and to do well, but they don't.
Well, and I think that's what's so disappointing, RC. He's quoting Pope Francis speaking of a polycrisis, but really there is only one crisis, the failure to recognize our Lord as King.
That's right.
and his church.
Right.
If that were recognized, there would be an end to this crisis. Instead, this polycrisis where he lists out all of these things, which there are obviously problems, but they're all subordinated to the problem, Your Excellency.
Of course. And as if, the UN has been around since, 1948? It has done nothing except talk. It hasn't stopped any wars. It was, we're going to stop all the wars. Hasn't done any of that. It hasn't made the earth a better place in which to live. And you think that these people coming together, all of these, Leo and so forth, by saying these things, these nice platitudes, everybody's going to get down on their knees and say, yes, Holy Father, we have to give up all of these nasty things. I mean, what kind of a world do these people live in? What kind of a dream world are they living in?
Regarding the problems of our time, and I think this is where we can get one of his first quotes, Your Excellency, the Church does not want to wave the flag of possessing the truth, the Pope said. It recognizes the importance of critical thinking and is called to remember that the primary task of doctrine is to teach us how to approach situations, and even more so, people. Is that the primary task of doctrine, Your Excellency?
No, again, that's straight modernism. The church does, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And we just had the gospel from the Ascension. Those who do not believe shall be condemned.
Sounds like waving a flag to me.
Yes, that's very much waving a flag. Preach the gospel to every creature, and those who do not believe shall be condemned. Right out of from our Lord Himself. So, I mean, that's straight modernism. He's a modernist heretic, this man. And all of those other things that he said are just, it's straight out of the modernist textbook. That's the only way I could say it.
Perhaps when we hear the word doctrine, we tend to think of a set of religious ideas.
Yes, a catechism, like the Baltimore Catechism.
What would lead someone to think such a thing?
Well, yes,
Doctrine can be a synonym of science, discipline, and knowledge. Understood in this way, doctrine appears as the product of research and consequently of hypotheses, discussions, progress, and setbacks, all aimed at conveying a reliable, organized, and systematic body of knowledge about a given issue. Consequently, a doctrine is not the same as an opinion. But here it comes, Your Excellency, it's Vatican II, so we know the next word is but. It is rather a common, collective, and even multidisciplinary pursuit of truth.
It's a pursuit. You see, it's a
we
voyage.
can't arrive anywhere.
Yeah, we're walking, and we never get there. But we're pursuing truth. You see, that's the essence. I mean, that is an abandonment of the Catholic faith. That paragraph right there.
Well, it gets better, Your Excellency. Indoctrination is immoral. It stifles critical judgment and undermines the sacred freedom of respect for conscience, even if erroneous. It resists new notions and rejects movement, change, or the evolution of ideas in the face of new problems.
Yes, that sounds like what our Lord said as he, before he ascended into heaven, preached the gospel to every creature, and those who do not believe shall be condemned. that sounds just like it. It rings the same way. And
We're recording this in the octave of the Ascension.
Yeah,
so this is on His
they
Excellency's
preached the
mind.
gospel, and the apostles went out and said all of this stuff.
It stifles critical judgment.
They said to the Jews, we don't want to preach the gospel to you because it stifles critical judgment, and we were in the pursuit of the truth. Is that what we read in the Acts of the Apostles? Would they have been put to death for saying such a thing?
I feel bad for all of the young people who memorize their catechism for receiving First Communion, because they're being immorally indoctrinated, so they're resisting new notions,
Right.
like transfinalization or other ways of considering the Eucharist.
And what is he saying except a doctrine? In other words, it comes right back in his face. That is a doctrine that he is saying. The mind cannot divorce itself from doctrine. Those very statements are modernist doctrine. And so you can't deny doctrine when you are preaching doctrine.
Well, the classic Bishop Sanborn example is someone pounding the pulpit saying there is no such thing as absolute truth.
There is no such thing as absolute truth. There is no such thing as doctrine. That's what he's saying.
And his last quote from this horrific meeting he had with this foundation: "There is so little dialogue around us. Shouting often replaces it, not infrequently in the form of fake news and irrational arguments proposed by a few loud voices." Probably very, very rigorous people, Your Excellency.
Probably
hateful.
traditionalists who believe in God.
Well, see if he's got any titles, mushrooms, rabbits, any of these other things.
I don't think he's going to come out with that stuff. I think he's too smooth, and I think that will be all the worse because he will not be recognized as a modernist the way he ought to be. Whereas Bergoglio just, he just, by calling people names, just made a name for himself, we might say, that he was a crude, horrid person. And but he won't do that. He's as smooth as silk, this man.
Well, if you're wondering how we got a lot of this news, we find material like this on Novus Ordo Watch, the sponsor of our episode. I'll tell you a little bit about it if you don't know. Are you wondering what has happened to the Roman Catholic Church? Are you confused, alarmed, and shocked by what has come out of the Vatican in the last few years? Then visit novusordowatch.org, which features insightful commentary and razor-sharp analysis. Since 2002, they have been exposing the Vatican II Church and its false popes by comparing and contrasting their new religion with the true religion, the modernist Novus Ordo teachings with the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. Go to novusordowatch.org to see how Leo is not a true pope and how the modernist Vatican II Church differs from the Catholic Church. And we'll put a link to Novus Ordo Watch in the description for the video. Moving onward, Your Excellency, we have the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si. How quickly the time has passed. Mm-hmm. Addressing this group, the Holy Father expressed his joy at the commitment to engaging in a synodal work of discernment.
Oh, there's another two words, straight out of the...
Right. The sentence is already packed. In preparation for COP30, which is a climate change conference.
Okay.
He acknowledged the university's efforts to reflect on a possible reconciliation between public debt and ecological debt. I wonder what ecological debt is, Your Excellency.
I think if you drive a car, you're incurring debt,
incurring ecological debt.
Right.
To you, university rectors, I wish to offer encouragement in the mission you have embraced to be builders of
Oh, man, we go again.
to be builders of bridges of integration between the Americas and with the Iberian Peninsula, working for ecological, social, and environmental justice.
Oh, that's just perfect memory. He has a catechism. He's memorized his catechism.
It's almost, there's a phrase book, Your Excellency,
Yes.
and then he just pushes a button and then it inserts into the message.
Yeah, it's like somebody preparing a meal, all sorts of spices and all of this, and you put it in. He's textbook modernist, more than anybody else. I mean, he's really got it down. Yeah.
As you say, a smoother version of Bergoglio.
Oh, yes.
So we have the death penalty in 2021 when he was a bishop. He made a commentary on something that Francis had enunciated regarding the death penalty. And here's what he said. In this chapter, Francis makes explicit what has already been the teaching clearly pronounced by the Church since the pontificate of John Paul II, the absolute exclusion of the death penalty. All are called to struggle not only for the abolition of the death penalty, but also in order to improve prison conditions with respect for the, here it goes, Your Excellency, human dignity of those deprived of their liberty. So I suppose we can start there. People may not have seen previous episodes. We've done one on the MHT Seminary channel on the death penalty, Your Excellency, so you've talked about it more extensively. But here, there's 2 points he's making. He says, clearly pronounced by the Church since the pontificate of JP2,
Right.
which implies this is a novelty in church teaching.
Yes.
And
it is.
The absolute exclusion of the death penalty, can that be supported in any way by church tradition or church doctrine, Your Excellency?
No.
Doctrine is a
St.
hateful
Paul,
thing.
St. Paul, the king does not carry the sword in vain. What do you do with swords?
You can cut off the ear of the high priest's servant. That's one of the things you can do.
It's usually meant to run through somebody else. No, the point is that he has the state. It goes back to the fact that the state rules by the authority of God, and therefore it has the authority to remove from society somebody that is a danger to society and who's committed something that is worthy of the death penalty. And all societies have had the death penalty. It's just common Christian society, Catholic societies. Everybody has had a death penalty, so it's something that is commonly recognized.
Well, and we'll put a link to that episode that we did together, Your Excellency. But one of the things in the description, one of the things that you noted in that episode is that in a Christian worldview, it's a great mercy, in a sense, to have the death penalty. It focuses the mind of the criminal, has him focus on what is to come in the judgment and the opportunity to repent. Because had he not faced that severe penalty, he may go on to a life in which he could die in his sins. This is an opportunity for him to be reconciled in a very short amount of time and offer up his death in a way towards expiating his sins. So he uses it to pivot the abolition. All are called, Your Excellency, you are called to struggle for the abolition of the death penalty. And then he uses it to pivot, but also to improve prison conditions. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with improving prison conditions for people. Although in this country, I think you can get cable TV and a college degree and all sorts of other things. Prison isn't so bad. You get 3 squares. But that social justice tinge that you've talked about, that's what we have to pivot into. We're going to abolish the death penalty, and that gets us in good with the European Union as well, Your Excellency. This is something that they don't like, so we have to move on with that. We also have a very quick appointment, a nun to lead the dicastery for consecrated life. Pope Leo XIV has appointed Sister Tiziana Merletti, former Superior General of the Franciscan Sisters of the Poor, as Secretary of the Dicastery for Institutes of Consecrated Life and Societies of Apostolic Life. So I'll start by asking, Your Excellency, apart from the tradition of the Church, is there anything objectionable in and of itself of having a female religious lead a dicastery?
Well, St. Paul says women should keep quiet in church. It is so contrary to tradition to have women in a position of authority in the Catholic Church that where all of the priests are male. See, so it just is incongruous. Is it a sin? Is it something that is no? But it's very incongruous. It would be a scandal in any other time.
I think as if I can use the term, modern Catholics who are living in the modern era, we don't have that same respect for tradition because so much in our external culture has broken down and attacked tradition, such that I'm thinking of, for example, that petition that was circulating to add St. Joseph to the canon. And the idea was, are you against St. Joseph? Do you not want St. Joseph to pray for you? And the idea, of course, was that the church has such respect for the inviolability of the canon and the traditions. Well, if I add this, then we can add other things. And so, yes, it would be good to add St. Joseph. There's nothing wrong with adding St. Joseph. However, the petition was resisted by the Holy Father.
Yes.
I think multiple Holy Fathers, actually.
Yes. Well, John the 23rd put it in, and then Paul VI took him out.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's not in the canon or the Eucharistic prayer of the Novus Ordo Mass.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
So they don't like St. Joseph, apparently.
That was simply done to break the ice of the untouchable canon. In other words, that the
Once
canon,
you can touch the canon.
Yes, that created a mentality. Well, everything's up for grabs now. If you can touch the canon, everything's up for grabs. So that was done, and you see, it had nothing to do with devotion to Saint Joseph because they took him out.
And that's why I wanted to ask you, see if there was anything in and of itself wrong, but there's just not a respect for tradition and the way things are always done, and so you wouldn't do it simply because it's never been done in thousands of years of church history.
Yes, it is just is contrary to the role of women in the Catholic Church.
So we'll close with looking at his coat of arms, Your Excellency. He has chosen a motto that reflects the Augustinian tradition in illo uno unum, which means in the one we are one. The phrase is taken from St. Augustine's exposition on Psalm 127, where he explains that although we Christians are many, in the one Christ we are one. In a 2023 interview with Vatican News' Tiziana Campisi, then Cardinal Robert Francis Provost spoke about the significance of this motto. As can be seen from my episcopal motto, unity and communion are truly part of the charism of the Order of St. Augustine, and also of my way of acting and thinking. I believe it is very important to promote communion in the Church, and we know well that communion, participation, and mission are the three key words of the Synod.
Now, again,
he can't even talk about his episcopal motto, Your Excellency, without...
Straight out of the modernist catechism.
Bing, bing, bing. Communion, participation, and mission.
Yes. Communion is an effect of the unity of the Catholic Church, unity of faith, unity of government, and unity of worship. That establishes communion. It's not something that you search for or try to. If you belong to the Catholic Church, you are in communion with the Catholic Church, and everybody has communion. If you're outside the Catholic Church, you're not in communion with the Catholic Church. But they have adopted this Protestant idea of partial and full communion. So, it's like as being a little pregnant, partial. No, it's true. It's slightly female or something like that. It's dividing something that cannot be divided. And so we're searching for communion, you see. And that was Ratzinger put out a document, the Church as communion. You see, not as an institution, a hierarchical institution, but the Church as communion.
You've been noting it as a buzzword for years in articles, Your Excellency. So
yes.
People can go and find that online. His Excellency has written about this.
Yes.
We're at the end of May. Leo was elected just earlier this month, and I think one of the things we talked about in preparing for this, you thought, well, he hasn't said that much, and it turns out he said quite a bit.
A ton, and I think that there's one priest that I know that said the neocons, meaning the Novus Ordo conservatives, are acting like teenage girls in love, and I think the love affair is over now. I've been reading the internet and looking on the internet. I think I don't think they've seen all of this, but I think that they have seen enough to know that he is going to just be another Francis, but worse because he will have more appeal than Francis.
Well, watchers and listeners, if you have any fans or people who are screaming teenage girls in your life, feel free to send them a link to this episode. Hit like, subscribe, share this with people who might be interested. And we will, as I say, do Leo Watch on a regular basis, whether that's monthly or quarterly. It's not sure yet. We don't know how frequently he will make some of these pronouncements, but when we can, we will do it. And as we've said before, sponsored by Novus Ordo Watch. As always, Your Excellency, thank you for your time.
Thank you.